Good morning, everybody. Um, welcome to ExploreWeb.la. So today we're going to talk about web design and dev as much as we can in the hour that we have right now. A little introduction. I'm Raf. I'll be one of your instructors today. So I first discovered HTML and CSS through like Tumblr, like editing my Tumblr theme and then just like changing my background and stuff. And also, I found it really cool how you can make your SAT scores if you click inspect element in your browser. So I did that, but I got busted anyway. But I just thought it was really cool. And that's basically how I discovered the inner workings of a website. And this is my partner, Vivian.
Yeah, hello guys. I'm Vivian. My pronouns are she, her, and I discovered well, it says I discovered HTML and CSS in college, but that's more of when I started playing around with like building my own websites. I like yeah. But yeah, excited to have you guys at this workshop. And we also have our volunteers if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
We can start with Ethan and then go in order and then go with Lucy last. Lucy is another volunteer with us. But yeah, Ethan, go ahead.
Hey guys, I'm Ethan. I'm a sophomore at UCLA, and I have been interested in HTML, CSS because I got into web dev, and working on it. It's really cool to like work on websites and stuff and be able to see it work. So I think that's how I got interested in it and how I've been, why I've like kept up with it too.
Hello everyone. My name is Wendy, and I was exposed to HTML and CSS through Code with Classy. And if that's something you're interested in, that is one of their programs. You can learn web dev over the summer, and I'll pass it over to Ashley.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley. I guess one of the things that fascinates me, or first of all, I'm a sophomore at UCLA, but I think web dev is definitely really, really cool because it allows you to create something from practically nothing, and it's also a lot easier to do so than some other methods. So really excited for this workshop.
Hi everybody, my name is Tina. I'm a second-year computer science major, pronouns she, her, and I got into web dev in high school I used to use like Wix, but then I started to create my own website completely from scratch, and it's super cool to see how your code can turn into this wonderful website that you can customize completely.
Hello guys, my name is Victor and I'm a junior at UCLA. I'm a applied math major, but I'm really interested in coding, so I have taken some like computer science classes, so like C++, Java, and I'm currently learning HTML, PHP, etc. Yeah, thank you guys.
I guess I'm last. Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm a fourth year double major in economics and sociology. But I guess similar to Victor, I'm interested in tech and I've dabbled in a little bit of like web dev because I wanted to create my own website. And yeah, happy to learn.
Awesome. Okay, so that's basically everyone. So these are all our volunteers for today. So they're going to be counting your points. So make sure to get your points up, participate, ask questions, and later participate in our little activity. I'm sure you guys will love it. We have it ready just for you guys. But yeah, you beautiful people will be here ready to answer any of your questions. So just feel free to message them. And yeah, so before we get started, we want to make sure that you'll be able to answer this question, what is web dev, by the end of the workshop. So this is basically our biggest learning outcome is that, as Tina and others may have mentioned before, there are these like website makers like Wix, Squarespace. You guys have probably heard those from like your YouTube influencers. They made their own portfolio or like their makeup artist page there. But y'all don't need Squarespace. Y'all don't need Wix. We're here to teach you the basics of how to get your own website started from scratch. So first, we want to tell you guys how the web works. Like we all know about the www World Wide Web, but how does it work? Like it's suddenly YouTube on your screen, right? You suddenly have Wikipedia, you suddenly have Instagram, Facebook, all of these on your screen, but you don't know how it actually gets to you. So of course, the first thing that you're gonna see is that all of these websites are actually code. There's actually an organization to this behind the scenes, both with its styling here in the bottom left and with its actual content in the top right. And both of these two things are the main things that we're going to look at today. But there's obviously a lot more that goes there behind the scenes, but we can't cover all that in an hour. So how does this code get packaged and sent to your laptops? That's probably something that you might not know, or it might be, something you just brushed off because like it's the magic of the internet. But we're here to give you a basic overview of how it goes. So there's, of course, the code is stored in your servers. So all of your photos, all of your ants cat photos on Facebook, they're all stored here. And this specific picture is actually what the servers at Facebook look like. So all of these tiny little like bits of information in these servers, in these rooms, they all have memory, they all have data, and they're all saved here. So it's pretty cool, right? And if you guys have any questions so far, then feel free to just message me, Vivian, or our volunteers, and we'll try to get to answer you real quick. But yeah, keep that in mind. So now how does the server go from there and turn into code that comes into your Google Chrome or Safari or whatever else browser you use? So for example, you are this cute K-pop group, and you said, show me a Twice video on YouTube. And so how does this go? Of course, from the user side, the first thing you would do is search it on a browser. You just do youtube.com, right? And then the browser then says, beep, boop, boop, give me YouTube, beep, boop, boop, through what's called an HTTP request. So that HTML, that request for the code goes from the browser to the server. The browser basically translates it and sends it to that blue room that you saw earlier, or whatever else room that YouTube has, or Google has, or any of these other websites have. And then the server sees the HTTP request and gives back the HTML and the CSS and all these other codes. And your browser basically uses that HTML and CSS and gives it back to you. And now it's a full web page, right? So now that code is translated and it's basically a web page now. And you can basically see that behind the scenes code. If you right click on any website and you basically see that it says view source code. And in that source code is all that information that came from the server just because you put youtube.com on your Google Chrome. And all of that happens in lightning fast speed. So all of these arrows aren't, like just some remote arrows like floating in the air in the cloud, but those are actually real wires that travel throughout the world. So here we have those arrows of communication and they can get interrupted. So that's a fiber optic cable. Sorry for that colon. But it's actually real connections in the entire world that goes under the sea, that goes through so many different wires. So it's not just some, virtual cloud, like its data is just not magically pop up from one place to another. It's all connected. And, there's actually been reports of sharks attacking these fiber optic cables before. And they've caused a little mess, like you may have gotten an internet outage. So if that next time that happens to you, maybe you think a shark is just having his meal. So, that might be what happens. So now you know that all of these areas of communication are all connected, and they basically give you that YouTube video you've been wanting to watch. They give you your crush's Instagram. They give you everything. So that's basically the basics of how the entire web works. And basically that's what we're going to look at today. The entire code here in the previous one, the HTML and CSS, that's what we're going to look at today. So I'm going to hand it off to Vivian in a little bit, and she can get started about how we can learn HTML.
All right. So before we get into what HTML is, if you guys have heard of HTML, feel free to drop it in the chat. Or if you guys have an idea of what it is, or you might want to take a guess, also feel free to drop that in the chat and you guys will get participation points. And we'll go ahead and wait a couple of seconds for you guys to do that. Oh, yeah, so a lot of people are putting hypertext markup language, and y'all are 100% correct. That is indeed what HTML stands for. Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part. Okay, so wait, Raf, can you move it back? Okay, yeah, okay, so HTML is a Sorry for the technical issues, guys. Seems like our PowerPoint is getting a little weird. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people are dropping what they think HTML is. And yeah, these are all really good answers. Thank you guys for participating and letting us hear y'all's thoughts. Okay, so HTML is the standard for describing the structure and presentation of information via the internet. So for example, if you thought of a website as a house, then HTML would be like the frame, the rooms, the plumbing, and other things like that. Okay, so what does HTML stand for? So now that we kind of have an understanding of the purpose of HTML and what it does, let's go ahead and look at what it stands for. So HTML, as some of you guys mentioned, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Okay, so let's go ahead and break that up a little. So the first part, hypertext, means that your text can contain links to other websites or different parts of the website that your text is currently contained in. And the second part, markup language, just means a system of formatting text and data. So for example, HTML has these things called tags, which allows you, the coder, to tell your browser what kind of text it's displaying. So for example, over here in this picture to the right, you can see that there are two p tags circled in green. We'll talk a little bit more about p tags in the coming slides, so don't worry too much about it right now. But basically, these p tags tell your browser to display a paragraph, and this is an example of what markup languages kind of look like. Okay, so now that we've talked a bit about what HTML stands for, let's go ahead and look at the overall structure of an HTML file. So before we can get into the structure, let's go ahead and define what the purpose of a file is. So the purpose of a file is for you, the developer, to easily organize and keep track of your code. Okay, so now let's look at what's inside of a HTML file. Inside of an HTML file, you'll see a doc type HTML, which we'll talk about a bit more in the next slide, and opening and closing tags in HTML, which basically tell your file that you're writing in HTML. A head section, which is where you'll store your metadata, which is like a fancy term for data about data, and your body section, where the actual content of your website will go. So now if these things don't make sense right now, don't worry. We'll be diving into them a little bit more in the coming slides. Okay, so as we mentioned before, when you create an HTML file, the first line of code you'll write is doctype HTML. The purpose of doctype HTML is to tell our browser what type and version of HTML we're using. It's important to include the doctype because it helps your browser handle and load your HTML file properly. When you import doctype HTML, it'll default to HTML5, which is the most recent version of HTML. Okay. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about anything we've covered so far? Feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat. What's the difference between an HTTP and HTTPS request?
Okay, I can cover that. So an HTTPS request is actually secured. So as you can see here, if you have like websites where it has like the green HTTPS, that means that their server is basically like secured, like you can trust them, and that they have like an actual certificate that's issued to them by this body of people. I forgot what exactly it's called. So if any of our volunteers might know what this group of organization of people is called. So if you want to make your own website and you want to like guarantee to your users like, hey, our website's secure. If we save your passwords, you don't have to worry about it. You basically can like ask this organization to give you a certificate where they can review your website and make sure like, all right, it is secure. And it's the exact same thing as an HTTP request, except with a guarantee that your information is secure and your privacy is guaranteed. So yeah, if our volunteers or anyone else would want to add upon it, who knows anything more about it, feel free to let us know, because web dev is really connected to cybersecurity. It's connected to UI and UX design. It's connected to everything. So it's really important to know the basics of web dev, especially since that's the language of the internet.
All right, someone else in the chat asked, is HTML only used for websites? As far as I know, HTML is most commonly used for websites. I haven't really seen it used in much other contexts, if Raf wants to like piggyback on that.
Yeah, so the important thing to know about HTML, it's basically just a way to organize your information, right? So it's basically like, this is the header, this is the body, this is the title of the page. So where do you usually see that format? In websites, right? So that's basically what it's most used for. But if you wanted to, you could use it for like homework or like book reports or something, where you're just like, this is my book report, this is my book report title, and you can put those in tags. But you know, you have Word for that, you have Google Docs for that, so you wouldn't really use that for that. It's not its best use. Its best use is still websites.
Yeah, so does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to like unmute or drop them in the chat. Okay, we'll give it a couple of seconds. All right, yeah, so it doesn't look like anyone has any questions right now, but if you guys do come up with any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat or unmute at any time. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and keep moving. Oops. Oh, wait, Raf, can you go up back?
There, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so here you can see a picture of something that we call a tag in HTML. As you can see here, a lot of HTML tags start with an opening tag, which is on your left-hand side, and with a closing tag, which is on the right-hand side. Between your tags is where you would put the content that you would want to show up on your screen. Within the angle brackets, which are those two less than equal signs, we have the element name, which basically tells our browser what kind of data your content is. So in this example of this picture, the element name would be P, which stands for paragraph. And basically this tag would tell your browser to render whatever data is inside of those P tags as a paragraph. All right. So now that we've explained the general format of what an HTML tag looks like, we can go ahead and take a look at the head tag. So the head tag tells our browser metadata about our file. Metadata is just a fancy way of saying data about our HTML file that we want to tell our browser. It's important to note that in your head tag, anything that appears in your head tag will not be rendered with the rest of your content. And when I say render, I just mean that it won't be displayed as part of your website. And one common thing that you'll find within the head tag is something called a link tag. A link tag is used to link to other documents. So for example, one such document that you might want to link to is a CSS file, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the coming slides. Okay, also, if you notice, the link tag has a slash at the end instead of the front. And this is because it's what we would refer to as a self-closing tag, which just means that you don't have to do a closing tag because it self-closes itself. If that doesn't really make sense, feel free to like ask questions and we'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, we'll go ahead and move on for now. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and honestly, if you don't remember everything, that's totally fine. We do have a review sheet that we'll be sending out to you guys once we start like sending you guys out into breakout rooms for the interactive activity. So now let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about the body tag or the body section. So the body section is denoted by our body tags. Our body tag tells our browser what content to display and how to display it. Within our body tag, we could find some common tags, such as our paragraph tag. So our paragraph tag tells our browser to display our content as a paragraph, and it's often used for descriptions in addition to our paragraph tag, another common tag we use is something that we call a header 1 tag, which is denoted by this like H1, as you can see here. So the H1 tag, or the header tag, defines the most important title for our file. So for example, in some of your textbooks, you might have noticed that the section name is often larger and bolder than the rest of the text in that section. This is because it's what we would call a header 1 tag. Besides a header 1, there are 5 other headers that are available for us to use, for a total of 6 headers. But we're not going to talk too much about the other headers. You guys could look these up on Google if you're curious, or ask them in the chat if you guys are curious. But yeah, we're not going to talk too much about them. And also down here below in this image, you can kind of see how like the header 1 and the p tags are all within this body tag. And on the right hand side is what your what your computer would be displaying, and on your left hand side is what the code looks like. Okay, so another commonly used tag is an unordered list. An unordered list is a bullet point list, and down below you can see an example of an unordered list. If you can't really see the code, don't worry too much about it, because this code on the bullet points is basically what you would need to do in order to make an unordered list. There is something else called an ordered list that we're not really going to cover in this presentation workshop, but basically the difference between an unordered list and an ordered list is that unordered lists are just bullet points, and ordered lists are like 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C, or something like that, like they're ordered. Okay. So next we have our image tag. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. So next we have our image tag. Our image tag can be used for images. So as you can see here, our image tag has 2 things called SRC and ALT within its angled brackets. So SRC can be read as source, and it stands for source link. And this is where you would put the link where the image can be found. ALT, which can also be read as alt, stands for alternate name, and this is the text that will be displayed if your image is not able to load. Also, it's important to notice that your source link and your alternate name need to be within these double quotation marks. Down below, you can see an example of how to use an image tag. Notice how on the right-hand side, on the browser view, instead of showing an image, there's a text that says exploretech.la logo. This is because our image failed to load, and so the alternate name was used instead. Okay, so that was a lot. We just covered a lot. So here's a review slide for you guys. But basically, a doc type is used when you would want to like tell your browser what type and what version of HTML you're using. And it's important to tell your browser this, because that way it can load and render your information accurately. Your head tag is basically where you would put data about your file. And it's important to note that like most of the time, this will not show up within your website itself. The body tag is where all of your other tags that stores your like actual content will appear. The header 1 tag is just like a really important title. It tells your browser, hey, this is a really important title. Your P tags are for paragraphs, and your unordered lists are like bullet points. And your image source is how you would like your image tag, sorry, is how you would load an image into your site. Yeah. All right, yeah, so we just covered a lot about HTML. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, unmute yourselves, drop it in the chat.
Okay, where is the image like located? Like if I import like the image tag.
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Are you asking about like where you would get the SRC?
Like if I was to click on the website, where would like the image appear?
Oh, do you want to expand on your question a little?
Because like, wait, do I just use the image tag wherever I want to put the image out? Is that like how I use header tags as well?
Oh yes, yes. So basically, so HTML is more of like the structure. So if you want your header tag to appear like at the very top, then you would put it near like at the very top. And if you want your image tag to show up like in the middle, then you'd sandwich it like near the middle. But to like actually display it on the website and make it look pretty and style it, you would use CSS, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so if anyone else has any questions, feel free to unmute or drop in the chat. Okay, someone asked. Okay, yeah, so someone in the chat asked, how would you upload your own images like PNG that doesn't have links?
Would you answer that, or I can?
You can answer it because I think my way isn't best practice, but yeah.
Okay, so if you have your own system, so if you're going to like have your own .html stored in your own computer, then you can just have the PNG or like JPEG saved in the same folder as your HTML file, and you can just refer to it instead of using like, okay, if you like look here in the back, like there's an HTTPS and stuff, you can just take all of that and instead like paste the actual like path from to your actual like to your actual photo in your local directory. But if you actually want to like send it out into the internet, that's why we have like image hosting websites such as like Imgur, TinyPic, even Google Drive. These are all places where you can upload your photo and then just get the address, just like here. If you right click on a photo and click copy image address, then it will basically give you this SRC code that you're just going to paste into your HTML file. But we're going to talk about that a lot more later in our breakout room activity.
Yeah, personally, I just upload it to Google Drive and I just copy the link from there. But yeah, as Raf mentioned, there are other ways. Somebody else asked in the chat, if HTML doesn't include the closing component, will it fail to load? And this kind of depends on the tag. So we have these things called like self-closing tags, which don't need a closing tag in order to load. So an example of a self-closing tag would be like an image tag. And you can tell that they're self-closing tags because they have this like slash at the end, or they're typically denoted by slash. If you're like unsure if it's a self-closing tag or if it requires closing tags, then you can like kind of just search up on Google and there will be like documentation that will like tell you what you need to like put down. But otherwise, if it's something like a paragraph tag, like if it's something like this p tag, then it does require a closing bracket or a closing tag in order to like render properly or load properly.
Okay, someone else asked, could you provide a more detailed purpose for the doc type and head portions? Okay,
Oh,
you want to
yeah.
answer that, Vivian? I can go back to that slide.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the doc type is really just here because you need to tell your file like this is HTML and this is the version of HTML I'm working in, mainly because different versions have like different rules to them. So like that's kind of what the doc type's purpose is. I'm not sure if that's like expanded enough for you or if you want me to continue elaborating, but basically the doc type is important because you need to tell your file, hey, I'm working in HTML and this is the version I'm working with. Because like it's kind of almost like if you were in school, right, and you were taking a test and your teacher tells you, hey, read this history textbook, but they don't tell you what version of the history textbook to read. Or actually maybe not history is probably not the best example because it's like consistent, but if you're taking a math test, right, and it's like a math textbook, and they're like, hey, read this math textbook, but they don't tell you which version of the math textbook, you're still probably going to get like really similar like information, but there's no guarantee that like what you're reading will be like exactly what you need for the test or what the teacher expects you to know. So that's kind of why it's important to put those doc types, just to clarify for your file that, hey, I'm using like HTML5 or I'm like using another version of HTML. Yeah, if you want me to expand on that, I can also expand on that, but I'll go ahead and move on to your next part where you said, what is the purpose of a head portion? So the head portion is more about like telling your file data about kind of like itself, but not really. So that's kind of confusing, but basically some things that you could like put within your head file is like, what will the website's like name be when it appears on a tab? So if you like look at a tab or like if you look at your browser, you'll notice that like in your tabs, they have names in them. So like, for example, Facebook would have Facebook in the tab name. And this is something you can set within your head file, your head section, sorry. And basically your head section tells your file data about like itself, kind of. I don't know if Raf wants to like jump in on that.
Yeah, I mean, like basically like Vivian said about the math textbook, right? So If the doc type is basically like, this is a math textbook, then the head file is basically like all the copyright information, the author information, like the year it was published, like stuff like that. Like you don't, that's not really the math part. That's not really the juice part of your textbook, right? Because you're there to learn math, but not there to learn about the copyright information or when it was published, who published it. So that's everything about that is what you put in the head. And link is one of those files that you put. As you can see here, there's a styles.css. So that's how you link your CSS, your style, into your HTML so that your CSS code styles your HTML. So you put it in the head. And that's exactly what we're going to cover now. So now you got all this information laid out. You're able to type in everything, right? So like you have the body, the H1, the image, but how do you style it? You have CSS. So CSS stands for cascading style sheets, right? So it's called cascading because cascading basically means like everything falls into the next. So like it pours down like water. So if you style, for example, your entire HTML file, it's also going to style your P tag. It's also going to style your H1 tag. But if you only style your P tag, then it's only going to change the style of that P tag there. So that's why it's called cascading, and it's called style sheets. It's because it's a code that styles your HTML. So it's basically there to like tell you, okay, this part is red, this part is blue, this part is in Times New Roman, this part is in Comic Sans. So yeah, that's basically what it does. So this is the basic essential part of a CSS code. So you have your selector. So what is that selector? What is that P? Does that P look familiar to you guys? I mean, like, as you can see here, this is the paragraph tag here, right? So now you can tell your HTML code, all right, change the color of your P into red. Okay, so if you have your HTML file, like this is what it's actually structured like for a diagram. So now that P tag turns red and everything under that also turns red. So you can just pretend that that this also turns red, this turns red, and this also turns red. So all of that turns red because it cascades down. And then if you were to make body green, then it would like it would actually not, P would not turn red, but it would turn green. So you can just do color green, but instead of putting P in the selector part, you change it to body. So that's the different parts of the CSS file. And that's basically the smallest chunk of a CSS file that you have. So it's P, and then the curly brackets, and then the styles that you want to add. There's entire cheat sheets on this in the internet where you can basically see what are all the different properties that you can change in your HTML file so you can style it. So you can change its font, you can change its color, its background color. And we're also going to all look at that and try to experiment with that later. But yeah, that's basically the essence of CSS. Okay, I can just clear my annotation. Okay, there. So this is a super bare bones introduction to CSS because we want you guys to have time for a breakout room activity where you can like basically try it for yourself. It's all laid out to you in our code. Our volunteers will give out the code pen for you guys where you can like edit it yourself. But yeah, do you guys have any questions right now?
Yeah, also, as we mentioned before, we do have a review sheet, and I believe that our volunteers will be passing them out to you guys during our breakout rooms. But also I'll be dropping them in the main chat right now. So if you guys want to go ahead and take a look at that review sheet, you guys can also do that while coding up the code pen. Our volunteers do have access to the code pen. I'll actually just go ahead and send that link again anyways, but we will be putting you guys out into breakout rooms unless anyone has any last minute questions. Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and assign you guys to some breakout rooms right now. Hello, everyone. If you're watching the recording, we're just coming back from breakout rooms and we're waiting for everyone else to come trickle in. But for those of you guys who are joining us back from the breakout rooms, I hope you guys like the activity. We'll just wait a little longer for people to like finish trickling in. Okay, I think we're missing 2 more people, but they should be coming in. Okay, all right. It looks like we have everyone back. Hello. I hope you guys all enjoyed that breakout room. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us, drop in the chat, DM us. Yeah, anything works. We're here to take your questions. We'll give it couple seconds. So while you're thinking about your questions, we're also going to explain the next part of our workshop. So this next part is we're going to go ahead and share some of our website designs. If you guys are comfortable with doing that, we would love to take some volunteers. But first, instead of having you guys volunteer first, why don't we have some of our lovely volunteers go ahead and screen share so that we can see their things. Would any of our volunteers like to go? Okay.
Go.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Thank you for volunteering. I believe you should be able to share screen.
Let me share my screen real fast. Okay, so I made this into my portfolio. I have my name up here. Wendy's prize ready. I inserted a self-portrait right there. And then I listed my favorite French fries.
All right, yeah, it looks super good. Thank you for sharing with us.
And I even turned some of my snazzy text into red, bright red,
Wow.
to match the fry container.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That was very cool. Love the red. Oh, I think Raf already answered this question, but we can go ahead and just reiterate it in case anyone's watching the recording. But the question was, using the HTML code we wrote, how can we publish it on the internet? Raf, if you want to explain.
Yeah, so you can make a CodePen account using your Google account. You can click fork at the bottom right. And well, if you don't have one already, if you're not signed in, it will prompt you to make one. And then now it's yours and saved in the internet. So now you have your own link to it and you can share it with your friends. And then they will be able to see the code really easily behind the scenes. So, but if you want to have your own .com and all of that, then that's going to be a little more costly. You know, you saw those blue rooms at Facebook servers earlier. So you're going to have to find a way to host it, like find a domain, like yourname.com. And then you can paste that HTML code there. You can be able to host all your files. You can even have JavaScript, which is another language that we use for the internet. So that actually manipulates your code, but that's a little more advanced. You can feel free to learn that more later. We're all, but yeah, does anyone want to share now? We can have one share if you guys are really proud of your website.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Shannon can go.
Okay, let me go ahead and make you a co-host so that you're able to share screen.
No, I think you can do it.
Oh, okay.
You can do it now.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. Wow, okay, it looks super snazzy. Do you want to go ahead and kind of like walk us through it? Looks super good.
Well, the goal is to create terror. I don't know. I just put things on there, random names. Don't think too much of it.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I love the blue background. Looks really good.
Thank you. I think that's all I needed to share.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Would anyone else like to share?
You have time for one more. Okay, Ashley.
Oh, Ashley, go ahead.
You should be able to click share screen. All right, awesome.
I just turned mine to a recipe site. So I have my title and my description. Then I resized my banana bread image, and I have my ingredients and a very specific mix and mash.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can definitely learn to make banana bread now. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Yeah, this looks super good. Wow, really good job.
Yeah, imagine what it looks like if you added CSS to it. Like, it can be amazing. You can teach the whole world how to make banana bread. Revolutionary. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your code. But I think that basically concludes our workshop. So if you guys have any reflections or conclusions that you guys have, like if you learned anything, feel free to send it in the chat. But yeah, Wendy really wants a group picture. We can definitely have that. Yes. So if you want to turn on your video and we can try to take a video with everyone who is sharing their video, I'll try to hide non-video participants. So I assume that if you don't have your video on, you don't want to be seen, but we'd love to see everybody have a little, a little last moment. Let's pretend we're all in person. But after taking this picture, you guys are free to go.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can also you can feel free to stay behind. But I do believe that we have something else after this planned with exploretech. So also feel free to hop out and go to that if you want to.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. All right. 1, 2. Oh, shoot. Okay, 3. Okay, nice. All right. Thank you guys for coming. If you guys want to learn more about like web development, we have an front-end engineer later at our panel in diverse careers in CS. So thank you guys for coming.